Yes, indeed, folks. You're tuning into Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. If you just tuned in, then you've missed even more of the show, and you'll be chastised. Yes, you will. You'll be chastised. Perhaps sent packing. Yes. Now, I have a topic for you. Something a little bit more in depth. A little bit less ranty, perhaps, but still a little bit. Because, hey, Ghostcrawler spoke, so, you know, some anger has to be involved there. Occasionally he says things which are quite silly. But I understand why he said this. Now, you can see the post specifically in the IRC chat channel. Go to irc.mmorc.com, # WOW Radio. If you are a podcast listener, you'll be able to find this on MMO Champion. Yes, indeed, MMO Champion. And the post you are looking for, you'll probably have to scroll down a wee bit on this one. You just search it through, look for talents. Now, if you look for a post about passive talents, it's about, at the moment, it's just at the bottom of the page, so it's probably going to disappear off. But it's blue posts, and the name of the article in question, as for the podcast listeners, patch 3.2 download, pre-download, in fact, and blue posts, which was posted on the 15th of July, 2009 at 11:34 p.m. Now, there's a post here by Ghostcrawler regarding passive talents. Now, the post in question is quite interesting. I like it. It poses a lot of interesting questions. And it goes something along those lines. We put in a lot of passive increases for a few reasons. And this is basically about hybrids. And they say, one, it's the main way for hybrids to distinguish themselves. Otherwise, elemental heals as well as resto. They are popular in a wide variety of situations. They are no-brainers, which, to be honest, a game as complex as WoW could stand to have a little of. They are very easy ways to tweak healing, damage, or tanking when a particular spec is underperforming or overpowered. But while these are laudable goals, in the end, we're not sure it's worth it. We wonder if the talent trees would be all more interesting with fewer passives and more interesting talents. Consider that even the situational talents wouldn't feel so expensive if they weren't competing against a 5% damage talent. Cherry-picking talents in another tree wouldn't be so scary either, since you wouldn't be sacrificing pure DPS, etc. to do it. Now, it's interesting to look at the way the talent trees work, because of course we know the purpose of the talent trees. The talent trees go back to Diablo, and Diablo, of course, being one of Blizzard's older RPGs, and they had talent trees in that as well. And it was giving you the chance to level up your character and enhance various different abilities, and you had to make choices. Yeah? You could build your character in a specific way. Now, WoW gave you 3 talent trees per class in order to do that, and for hybrid specs particularly, that's quite important. So you're looking at the ability to do damage, the ability to heal, or the ability to tank. Now, for pure DPS classes, this has been less of an issue, because it's damage, damage, or damage, and it's like, which way do you want to do it? And there's not a massive difference between all of them. And it doesn't affect your style of play all that much. So, I was looking at this post, and one thing that concerned me, specifically, was the line, cherry-picking talents in another tree wouldn't be so scary either, since you wouldn't be sacrificing pure DPS, etc. to do it. That's kind of a scary thing to say, in my opinion. Because here's the thing. Making the choices with the build, making the choices with the talents are what defines your character in a very real way. And there aren't many ways to do that. WoW itself is not doing so well on the customization stakes at the moment. It is very low on the table of MMORPGs that allow you to customize your character, whether or not it be in the abilities the character can use, or how the character looks, or any other number of things. It's very low on those stakes. It is beaten by a lot of different games. Lord of the Rings Online, prime example. Warhammer Online, prime example. Aeon, upcoming, prime example. A lot of other games that really do beat WoW in the customization stakes. So to say that you are willing to sacrifice the ability to make a definitive choice about your character because we're just a little bit afraid that it's going to be too scary for the guys playing the game is not a good thing to say, in my opinion. To me, it seemed like talents were the most important thing in choosing what your character was going to be. Yeah? You chose what your character was going to be, and then the gear that you got helped you in that way. But the first choice that you made after choosing your class, as you started developing your character, was the talents that you picked. And yes, you had to make some hard choices. I would like to have a whole bunch of talents as my mage. I would. I would like to have arcane power, as well as combustion and living bomb, but I ain't gonna get it. Oh no. Absolutely not. I like to have brain freeze, not gonna have that. I like to have summon water elemental, not gonna have that either. That's the point. I have to make those choices. There are even a number of passive talents that I would love to have. Oh yes. Many passive talents that I would absolutely love to have. I can't take them. And that's okay, because I've made the choice. I come up with something interesting that is probably going to work. I weigh it against all of the other possibilities that I have within the talent trees, and I say, okay, I made this choice. That's what I'm going to stick with for the time being, until I decide that, hey, maybe it's not for me, or there's something quantifiably better. Now, I don't really take issue so much with the comment that WoW is becoming a complex game. And a lot of people will say, oh, WoW is easy, blah, blah, blah. And yes, to some degree it is. But now, particularly with Wrath of the Lich King, you are dealing with a lot of abilities. Yeah? A first-time player could potentially be overwhelmed. You know, there's a reason why Death Knight is an advanced class, and it's not the whole, oh, let's just give people free level 55s. No, it isn't. Here's the thing. The way that Death Knights are designed, and the way that they wanted them to be designed, to start off at a higher level, do all of these quests, and introduce you very quickly to all of the abilities, it takes an advanced player to play that well. And you can see that because there's a lot of really bad Death Knights. But could you ever play a Death Knight at that level if you had never played the game before? Well, no. Could you have started a Death Knight from level 1? Well, maybe. But honestly, if you look at the way that a lot of the abilities work, yes, it is quite an advanced class. There are some classes that are considered more advanced than others. I remember back in the day when Warlocks were genuinely considered to be an advanced class. That was what people on the forum said, that's what the official guide said. Yes, Warlocks are an advanced class because they have to deal with all of this stuff. Hunters, to some degree, an advanced class, at least to play well. You have to deal with a lot of different stuff as a hunter. Warriors, well, less so. Until you got really knee-deep into tanking. Mages, not a particularly complex class. And yeah, classes do run the gamut. Some are easy to run, some are not so easy to run. That's just the way of things. But the way that talents work is they allow you to progress at your own pace. In the situation of learning the character, as you're going up from level 1 to 80, you're learning the character and you're gradually adding your talents in. And yes, you have to make choices. But let's face it, it's not like you can't reset them. And when you're talking about making choices in a build, yes, sometimes you have to make some really hard decisions. But that's what gives you the variety. And yes, I would actually agree. Throwing in a bunch of more abilities that are not passive, we're talking about like activatables and cooldowns and stuff like that, is going to make things horribly complicated for some people. You got to bear in mind, a lot of people can't even handle it to begin with. And as an advanced player, as an experienced raider, as someone that understands their class back to front, I don't know whether or not I would really want to stuff my hotbars with a bunch more abilities. Especially if they're just cooldowns and stuff like that. You know, you might as well just be giving us trinkets. It's the same thing. Passives have a place. Absolutely they have a place. Without a shadow of a doubt. Now, he does say that they have some ambitious plans to get more talent trees sort of sorted out and combining a lot of the older talents. Now, cleaning up the talent trees, that's a different matter entirely. Yes, combining the talents, fine. Bringing new stuff that way, that's alright. I wouldn't want to see a lot of the passive stuff taken out, though. I mean, for one thing, that's going to throw the balance for a loop. I mean, that's obvious. But for another thing, it's going to throw a whole bunch of new abilities at people that they won't necessarily know how to deal with. And for what we've seen so far with Blizzard, they really do run the gamut from useful talents to why the hell is this here talents. They do. Some of them are passive, some of them are not. I mean, combustion is still a terrible talent. It's been around for ages. It is an absolutely abysmal talent. Really. I take it just because there's nothing better to take. It really doesn't help all that much. And a couple of extra crits every 3 minutes is really not a big deal. At all, bearing in mind the way ignites work. Now, those of you who don't know how mages work, a lot of the damage you get from crits come from your ignites. Yeah, which happens when you get a crit, you ignite the target, and you do 40% of the damage over 4 seconds. Now, ignites do not roll, and they do not stack anymore. So, getting multiple crits, one after the other, is a bad thing. It is. And they tried to make it a good thing by giving you Hot Streak. Yeah, double crits give you a free Pyroblast. But what that was really doing was compensating for the fact that ignites don't roll properly, and one ignite can overwrite another, so you lose potential DPS. That's why Combustion's a bad talent. Yet it is still there, and it's still unactivatable. Now, I don't know whether Blizzard can come up with some new activatable talents that are actually interesting. And that actually work effectively. I mean, Combustion looks like a relatively interesting talent when you start, but when you look at it in theory, and when you start using it in a raid, you realise that it's actually not all that great. It doesn't help push your DPS a lot. Not amazing. Now, more choices is a good thing. The way that talents are currently structured at the moment is not ideal. They're better than they were. That I will say. Mages, prime example. You know, something that I know very well, that's why I talk about it. Mages, Arcane used to be absolutely worthless. The way that they had that design was that Arcane was a tree that you could kind of dip into. And I remember back in the day, and this was actually back in pre-TBC, making the suggestion that if you're going to have Arcane set up that way, then don't make it a tree, make it a pool. Demolish the tiers. As in, widen the tree. You know, we're talking about a bush here, a talent bush. Many, many low-hanging fruits. You can cherry-pick what you want. Take it out of there. And yes, they did eventually do something with it. But there's still a bunch of crazy support talents in there. Now, there are other builds that, of course, are going to dip into a second tree. Now, there are very few builds that work in a tri-spec kind of area where you dip into 3 trees, but there are some. Depends what class you're playing. And you're going to dip into those trees, and that's okay. But what Blizzard have demonstrated over the past 4 years is that they have difficulty balancing the viability of a single tree with its usefulness as a support tree. As in, I'm going to dip into this for a few talents. And there are still issues. There really are. I mean, Frost is a prime example. Frost is obviously something that would be incredibly useful for the Frost Fire build, and it's something that, yes, you do dip into because you want to get hold of stuff like Icy Veins. And yet you still have to take terrible, useless talents. Still! That's, in my opinion, what they should be concentrating on here. Not worrying over whether or not people have to make genuine choices. Here's the problem. It's not about making choices, not about the fear of making choices. It's about the fear of making choices that you know are going to suck. Because you don't have a choice. It's not about making choices, it's about not having a choice to make. It's as simple as that. It's not that hard to realise. It's not that hard to figure out. You just need to look at the Frost tree, for instance, and you'll see the entire first tier of Frost totally bloody useless for PvE. If you're built into anything that isn't pure Frost. If you're built in pure Frost, then why the hell are you doing PvE? I mean, come on. And even if they do make Frost viable for PvE, you're again going to run into a situation where some people are still going to take through to whatever for Icy Veins or try and get improved Blizzard because it's nice crowd control AoE. And I imagine this is not simply true of mages. A lot of other classes, a lot of other trees, I imagine, run into exactly the same problems. So yes, I think they're looking at it in entirely the wrong way. They're looking at it upside down, back to front. They need to concentrate not on forcing people to throw away the hard choices. You know, because I like making the hard choices. I've always liked that. I like making the choices. Action RPGs with talent trees, anything with a talent tree, I like making the choices. That's good. It lets me play in the way that I want to play. And yes, I'm willing to sacrifice things in order to be that, because I don't want to be everything. I want to be something specific. I want to have strengths and weaknesses. That's something that appeals to me as a gamer, particularly an RPG gamer. That's the point of a class system, surely. Surely that is the point of a class system. To have strengths and weaknesses. To have stuff you're good at and stuff you're not. So what you need to stop is stop forcing people to make bad choices in order to make the choices that they want to make. Not forcing people to make choices. You know, forcing people to make choices is good, but don't make them make a choice they don't want to make. Every choice they make should benefit their character in some way. Not nerf it to the ground. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. I'll be right back after this, folks. Enjoy.